Rush to safety is going to be the topic today. Where should you go into assets as we start to see squeezes all around the markets? We'll break it all down for you. I do want to thank our sponsor today, and that is BTCC. If you are trading volatility out there, this is one place you can do it. 10% bonus on your first time deposit. Jump over there. A couple of benefits that you can get by using this. As always, remember, not financial advice. You should always diversify your assets no matter what you're doing out there. I think all of you know that, but just in case, I want to go over and let's actually, you know what, before we get into some of the macro side of this, I want to bring in Aldo because he's going to help us today on a little bit of charts. And of course, you know him out there from the real Aldo on Twitter. How are you?
I changed the Twitter, doing great. I just got the just Aldo on Twitter now. Changed the, it's just at Aldo.
Okay, we got to fix that for you. At Aldo.
Yesterday I got it. Yeah. But doing great,
got it.
You know.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice new feature. So yeah, doing great. You know, it is what it is. You know, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was, you know, more cautious about the markets, you know, lately. But look, I mean, I'm not that bearish. I think we could see a bottom for Bitcoin within a few months here. So I'm pretty cautiously optimistic.
Well, we're going to look at a few things that could push it there. One, of course, is this February job report, which is, yes, a total disaster. U.S. didn't stop hiring. It actually lost 92,000 jobs in February. Unemployment has climbed to 4.4, surpassing the 4.3. And now you have markets that are starting to react to this, Evan. You got the Dow Jones down, the S&P down, NASDAQ is down, and so on. All of this starting to brew into a nightmare for the Federal Reserve. If you've got unemployment still on queue and you have rising inflation coming in from all this hot kinetic stuff that's happening in Iran, this basically gets us into stagflation. How does the Fed respond to this, man?
So I think that we're going to see some better news. You know, I think it's not going to be as bad as some. I don't think we're going to see actual stagflation. You know, I think things are going to end, and it's going to, you know, I think you got a few more months of things kind of energy, oil potentially going up. But after that, I think inflation kind of stabilizes again. Okay. And once Kevin Warsh gets in, I think the plan stays. You know, I think you may see some cuts potentially July. You know, that kind of area. I wouldn't get too afraid of stagflation just yet. I'll keep more of a optimistic outlook so far.
All right, I like that. Well, let's go on to the not so optimistic. So this is the second largest monthly job loss since the pandemic. Oil prices up 60 in 4 months. That's a new 2-year high. Gas prices up 20 since December. So Trump has kind of lost the critical measurements here. U.S. PPI inflation also now unexpectedly rising to its highest since July. So we got a lot going on, as well as the 10-year note yield, which is up 20 basis points. So all this stuff kind of looking at the factor of how much worse can it get. Do we see the crypto market take the biggest heat here, or will the S&P be a bigger issue right now? When you look at the S&P 500 today and the chart, I mean, what's your feeling on this? Do you think this is retracement time?
Yeah. But on the bright side, it could, you know, S&P 500, Bitcoin could bottom before the S&P 500. You got right here. This is probably going to break downward. You got these peaks from back in, you know, early 2025. You know, if you look at your money flow on these high time frames, not looking good at all. Your 2-day money flow coming down. Look at the last time, you know, that led to this drop down, you know, back last year. I don't think it's going to be a bad recessionary area, but I do think, and this is probably my low, my like worst case scenario, maybe 10 to 14%, 10 to 15%. This area right here, if you look at the daily as well, curvature, money flow coming down, kind of rare bearish signs. But again, S&P 500 has a 10 to 15% correction every 1 or 2 years. So that's nothing that bad. So, you know, I do think if you draw a fib level, you know, right here, this is a big point, 645. If you lose that, this big pocket around 613, 619, huge areas that you likely would end up going to. Bitcoin, if you look at SPY versus Bitcoin, obviously it's outperformed Bitcoin since last July. I think the majority of this move is probably over. These are past bear markets for Bitcoin, 460 here, 277 here. So far, you've outperformed Bitcoin by 100. I think you can go a little bit more, maybe 150 to 200 in the next few months. I kind of predict that once you get to kind of this level over here, potentially in the summer for S&P 500 Bitcoin, this would be an area to potentially make the trade to convert S&P 500 into Bitcoin, potentially right over here in a couple months. So yeah.
All right, well, some things that are lining up to maybe force the hand of where Bitcoin and investment is going is going to come from what we're seeing around these job numbers, I think, at least. Here's Kevin Hassett talking about this from the White House.
Are there enough asterisks, in Jim's words, to make this number make more sense?
Well, I think, Jim's right that there have been so many strong indicators this month that it's something of a surprise, but there's some weather, there are strikes on the West Coast, and I think that we also have this birth-death model, a change in the procedure at the BLS.
Why is this guy smiling? I don't get that. Why is Chris Farley smiling at me? I feel like they're just dismissing it on what is, I think, just frivolous ideas. Now, one thing they are also not concerned about is this whole AI front. I want to get your opinion on this. Let me play one more clip for you.
When I speak to all the companies that are in AI, one of the things they say is, listen, what we're really doing is we're taking an information worker who has maybe a force of 1, and we're putting in an agent that may have a force of 10, and we don't need to have as many people. Are we seeing a secular decline in employment in information? Because some people would say that's good.
Yeah, as the world gets more productive, right, then that's a good thing. But there are definitely people whose occupations change over time. What we're seeing, there's a guy named Eric Brynjolfsson at Stanford that has a recent study that's had some criticism, but it's basically showed that AI has made it so that there's lower hiring of people who are kind of new college graduates, but higher hiring for people who are like a little bit in because they're so much more productive and so much more valuable. And so firms at the moment are, not having with AI much of an effect on jobs one way or the other because there's some declines at the bottom and increases at the top. But the increases are way more important for GDP because those people are being incredibly productive and getting huge wage increases. And so it's a real positive. But the question is what happens to the younger folks that are, maybe being disappointed.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, if you're just a college grad, you're getting screwed because you need a little bit of understanding of what the market is, so you can really leverage down on the AI side of things. This could benefit some of the mid caps because you could see companies get much more profitable around certain sectors out there. But if you look at the current stock market, look at this right here. I mean, we are getting wiped out on the S&P. What is your position right now? If you're looking at trying to position safe capital, what are you doing with it right now? Are you just locking up in stablecoins, or are you locking up in high yield money market? Where are you?
Well, I remember I told you, Paul, a few months ago, I think it was in December or November of last year, I said it was a good time to invest like a 95-year-old. And I told you I bought some Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
Yeah, which that includes energy. XLE is another one that's done very well. Those are safe bets that probably will outperform the S&P 500 as well as Bitcoin for next 3 months, I would say, probably until, the summer, some, situation like that. So it's kind of safer assets. Putting all of it in cash right now, I mean, now you're getting inflationary fears. I am not a cash guy. So I would say, S&P 500 will probably continue to outperform Bitcoin. What will probably continue to outperform the S&P 500 would be something like XLE, the energy ETF, something that it's 30% bonds like Berkshire Hathaway, things of that nature, boring stuff. No one likes them because you're not going to get rich on them, but you'll preserve your capital for a couple more months, and then you could get some really good deals. In terms of AI, I think a lot of that bubble is popping right now, but on the bright side, the average bear market for stocks and crypto only lasts 8 to 12 months. A lot of things, topped out in December, January. So August is where it points to. Around 8 months from there would be your golden buying opportunity.
August being a golden buying opportunity. You look at the gold ETF. This is another one. Right now, they saw an outflow of 2.9 billion on Wednesday. That's the largest in 10 years. So people taking some money off the gold table. I'm looking at the chart right here, Evan. I mean, this had spiked up to around 5,300 here recently, has retraced back down to 5,140. But remember, this thing hits 5,500 not 2 weeks ago. So is gold still an asset that you would go into, or would you pause on gold right now?
It's a hold right now, I think. I would not be buying gold at these levels. It's tough to say. It's a weird thing, but I do think that one of two things is going to happen here. One, this could have been easily your top here, and you correct with the S&P 500. You just come down with the S&P 500, something of this nature. It's hard to say how low, but you come down, let's say. And the more bullish case is you have more and more kind of jump up, maybe 5,800, maybe 6,000, and then you potentially come down. I think what's important to compare gold to is gold versus Bitcoin right here. So these are previous bear markets. For Bitcoin, gold outperformed it by 470% here, 320%. Obviously, the pattern is less every time. So far, you've outperformed Bitcoin by about 220%. So, if you've been holding gold, it's actually not the worst place to potentially convert a little bit over into Bitcoin. I do think you may have one more kind of last jump up in the next few months. What I'm waiting for to convert my gold over to Bitcoin is these momentum waves. For this VWAP to come down, you get a red buy signal, red dot buy signal right there. Very similar to these situations back here. So I don't think you're quite there yet, but you're getting close. Maybe just a few more months to convert some gold back to Bitcoin, in my view.
By that time, you look at the continuation of what President Trump is talking about here, which is that there's not going to be a deal with Iran unless they surrender. But this is the typical taco with Trump. I think Kobeisi has this whole model. I think we're on number 6, which is people expect that it's going to be much longer than it will be. If you look at that and you look at where Bitcoin is trading right now at 68K as we record, where do you think Bitcoin is heading from here right now?
So obviously, I think the first thing I'll say about that is I think that Trump is obviously using that as the negotiation strategy. I think they'll come to something within a few months, probably. I don't think there's going to be troops on the ground or anything like that. Hopefully not. When I look at Bitcoin, this was a big kind of rejection here. I could see you easily this month getting back down to these lows. This could be the bad month. Just keep that in mind. This could be the, maybe give it a few weeks, see what happens, because you could end up, this could be a cycle bottom though, 48K, something like here. Huge area. If you see this month, maybe next month, that could be, your potential cycle bottom. So that's really what I'm looking for right there. This daily trigger wave right here is forming. The real thing that I'm looking for potentially is this 2-week, this deep anchor wave that's going to form very similar to how it formed back here. Now, people would argue this was not the bottom, but if you don't count FTX, that would have been the bottom. That would have been your June bottom. And Bitcoin generally bottoms earlier every single time. So it's not surprising at all. It wouldn't be surprising at all to see a bottom this month, next month, or May. That 3-month period is where I would.
So basically a 3-month window right now for a possible
That's
bottom.
What I'm thinking.
All right, I'm looking at a poll that we put up this morning. We got a few votes on it. Where would you vote right here? This is in reference to, for the audio listeners, what happens first, Bitcoin 55K or 85K from today, and here we are on March 6th.
Evan the Bear is going to vote bearish.
Evan the Bear is with the rest of the crowd at 63% right now, Evan. So people are not looking too hot right now. That's with almost 500 votes in. So that's a big deal. All right, so Evan, last week we had a good interview with Gareth. He was kind of pointing, Gareth Soloway, in case you guys don't know, he was kind of pointing at this 80 to 85 range. We never made it there. He wasn't locked in on it, but he did think that we would get there. You look at this in the bear market rally, is it already over at this point, or do you think we may get another run at it?
I think it's probably over. I think the 74K, and I'll show you, if we look at the chart over here, I mean, the thing is that normal bear market rallies don't bring you up. Like sometimes they can bring you up that high, but I really think 23% probably was enough. You stopped out all the people trying to short. I could absolutely see something like this happen, maybe 75, but it's going to be tough with everything going on to get all the way up to 82K. The thing is, if you somehow do make it that high, then we could, if you make it this high and you hold this, we could absolutely talk about making new all-time highs and going into a super cycle. That's where momentum would really change. And you would see, like on this 3-day, if that were to happen, you would see these EMAs, see these like gray EMAs right here, you would see these start to get bright again potentially, and that's major momentum. You could kind of do something that you saw over here, but until that happens, I wouldn't be very optimistic, unfortunately.
There you go, not very optimistic. And one thing to make note of is that we're starting to see FUD coming into the market again, even more so. Right now, just in, Binance says U.S. Senator Blumenthal's claim that Iranian-linked accounts operating on the platform were false. and its attack on crypto. You have that one right behind it. Of course, we know about Justin Sun, the Tron founder, has now been, the case has been dropped by the SEC, Trump's SEC. So again, more FUD coming in. And then you have all of this issue around this state of, or the Strait of Hormuz, which has been really built around this situation where the Lloyd's of London had pulled out. Now this is going to slow oil. So my question is, if you were betting on gold or you were betting on oil right now, from an investment standpoint, which route would you take?
I would definitely take oil. And the reason, let me just show you one chart I really like over there. If we look at like XLE, I mean, that's energy, but I always like to look at this chart. Look at this big area that we hit right here on XLE versus gold. So, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. XLE will probably jump higher. I think oil's kind of seen its, excuse me, I think gold's kind of seen its fun. It's seen its rally. And I think even if you can get like just a fraction of what you got like in 2022, that's still like a 40, you know, half a 60%, 30% jump. Like I'd be surprised if this doesn't at least get some type of jump against gold here. So, yeah.
I think the concern is how much appetite does Trump have for a market in turmoil? You know, because he is a market guy. Clearly it dictates kind of his moves. But if you go into this move that he did, back to this tweet, he put in basically a stopgap for what Lloyd's of London backed out on, which is basically managing insurance for vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz, which controls so much of the global oil flow. And right now, his new USDFC, which is the kind of the temporary insurance, right now it's short. So it may not even be able to underwrite these policies if they were to go through there. And the other issue is whether or not they will or not. So, and this is in reference to captains, et cetera, even trying to attempt it. I've got a clip that I want to play for you because this is exactly what I'm talking about. Take a look.
And we will have to wonder, China, there are reports that China's putting pressure on Iran to continue to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. We know the US is discussing what they can do to try and open up that waterway, but so far there's very little traffic.
They're giving us some thoughts and some reasoning as to why they're doing this as well. It's based on their latest risk assessment, which will be no surprise to anybody, but also an operational review considering escalating conflict affecting safe navigation in the Gulf region. It's a precautionary measure to ensure the safety of personnel and vessels. And it goes back to, conversations we were having earlier on this week, that this isn't just about insurance. Just because you can get insurance doesn't mean that ship owners, let alone ship captains, are going to take those ships through the straits.
Yeah, ING pointing out that even if you had Navy escorts for these ships, they would be sitting ducks, in their words, a target perhaps for Iran.
Yeah, and you look at that, I think this only supports your XLE position right now because there's the flow of tankers. That's including LNG, containers, LPG, and oil, which is huge. EU gets hit hard on this. China gets hit hard on this. A lot of countries really start to take it on the front end of this. I wonder how much this is going to put pressure on. And even when you look at what Trump and the U.S. did with alleviating India's sanction position, where they were going to be able to buy a certain amount of oil from Russia, this really gets quickly interesting around these energy stocks, and especially to your point, when you look at these ETFs. When would you rotate out of that? If you're in an XLE play right now, when would you rotate out of that? Because the key here is knowing when that starts to move down.
So I think the most important thing to look at for that, I mean, the short answer is probably a couple more months, probably the summer. But if we look at XLE versus Bitcoin right here, you know, this is what it did versus Bitcoin in 2022. You know, we're approaching that point very similar. It's like clockwork. We're 1 month early here. This was April, and then you had one more jump up. What marked kind of your top here? You know, if we look at some momentum waves here, this kind of area, once you had higher momentum waves, we're not quite there yet, but you can kind of, and I would guess it wouldn't be this, you know, I don't know if it's going to come that high, but I think you can get up a bit more in the next few months. So a lot of things point to summer for me, like August, that area. I want to see what this looks like, though. I want to wait till this VWAP here kind of comes down, and you could kind of June, you know, that area, couple more months, I would say.
All right, there you go. This is just kind of verifying what we were just talking about there. This was Secretary Bessent talking about the move with India, because it's a deliberately short-term measure to allow India to go out and secure some oil but not in a way that it would benefit the Russian government. So, which is, still staying within those sanction issues, which goes back to your point, is this could still linger on all the way through summer. All right, let's talk about a couple of other things. I want to hit Ethereum real quick. Let's take a look at the chart on ETH, and then I want to get your position. Is ETH something that you would look at right now versus Bitcoin if you were to come out of this? Do you feel like it can over index against Bitcoin once we start to see Bitcoin bottom?
Yeah, I mean, it bottomed before, Bitcoin back in 2022. I mean, if you go all the way back, I mean, this hit a bottom in June of 22. Things generally bottom earlier. So, it's not impossible that, I do think you're going to go lower. Like at 16 to 13, I do think you're going to hit, these areas on ETH, especially if Bitcoin goes to 50K. I think this easily would drop to like 16, 15. These areas, Bitcoin, anything within the 40s, probably 1300. But I think the question, obviously, that we all have, that you were just saying, is, can it outperform Bitcoin? That's what we all want to know. Right now, I don't really like how this looks. I think it can, just being objective, I think it can keep bleeding against Bitcoin a bit more. I'm looking for some momentum changes here. And I think once you get this wave coming up, like on your 2-week, I want to see some more momentum money flow coming up here. So this would also point to like end of summer or sometime in summer that, especially if you do see a ceasefire by then, I think there would be, and Kevin Warsh coming in, so rates being cut, that would probably help out this evaluation. So maybe come down a little bit lower, then you do something like that potentially into the end of the year. That's what I'm kind of looking at. But for the next few months, probably not worth the risk against Bitcoin right now. What is your catalyst if you're looking at the market right now? Where do we bottom? What's going to cause this to move? I've got a poll right here. It says, which has the bigger impact on crypto markets right now? Would it be the Clarity Act going through, the Iranian war situation maybe easing up, and then or both equally? What do you think? I mean,
impact on crypto.
Generally, what was that last part?
Impact on crypto.
Oh, yeah. Generally, I think that legislation can mark bottoms when you're in a bear market. So I think the Clarity Act, that being passed, whenever that may be passed, and that probably is going to be after Iran is done, that would mark a bottom, in some way.
Well, here you have it. Clarity Act is number one, 60%. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty big. All right, so you look at that, and then you look at the poly market on Clarity Act. Now, we've been flatlining since President Trump's tweet, which pretty much said, "Hey, I'm on the side of the American people. Banks go f off. We're gonna, you need to come back to the table here." And of course, whether they get this done, I just don't know, because the banks are still playing hardball for sure. What on Solana right now? What would you put? Would this be one of the altcoins that you would play right now?
Potentially. Now let's take a look at Solana. Its normal chart right now. I think it's kind of rejecting. This could come down farther, but some of these, they could bottom a little bit earlier in Bitcoin. I mean, that's 67. These areas, next area after that, maybe 56. It's possibly come down quite a bit more. It's hard to say, but I think the more important thing to look at on this is Solana versus Bitcoin right here. And I do think that if you can hold this level right here against Bitcoin, that would be pretty good. However, if you lose this level against Bitcoin, then you're probably going to go down to these levels. Unfortunately, with everything going on, if I had to guess, I would say you're probably going to lose the level. But what you could do here is if you set a notification for this area right around here, like I have, and Solana loses this level against Bitcoin, I would convert the Solana into Bitcoin. Very low risk, high reward. But if it does, go up, then you could really get, some good returns, versus Bitcoin. But as of right now, Solana on its own, oh man, like it's just not something I would buy at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This is a buy signal, but it could be a tricky one. Let's see what happens. I want to wait for this 2-week at least. So yeah.
All right, well, there you have it, guys. Right now, SAFE is getting a little bit more precarious. So, as Evan says, invest like a 90-year-old.
95-year-old.
Right now. 95. Okay.
Warren Buffett.
Well, that's true. All right, Evan. Listen, if you guys aren't following Evan's channel, make sure and do that right now. You can head over there, hit that subscribe button. If I was signed in, I could subscribe right here, but I'm not subscribed because I'm not signed in. But if you are, make sure and let him know that we sent you over there. He does a lot of trading and market cipher tutorials out there. We're going to be covering this and more next week because there's going to be some hot topics for sure. We will catch you soon. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.